item on your Steam wishlist has just released. Investigating a letter from his late wife, James returns to where they made so many memories. Silent Hill. What he finds is a ghost town, prowled by disturbing monsters uncloaked in deep fog. Confront the monsters, solve puzzles, and search for traces of your wife in this remake of Silent Hill 2.
I got an email. The name on the subject said Silent Hill. That game's name. It's ridiculous. Couldn't possibly be true. That's what I keep telling myself. A dead series can't release a game. Konami killed that damn franchise 12 years ago. So then, why am I buying it? Could Silent Hill 2 really be there? Is the series really alive? Waiting for me? We've come a long way here. Silent Hill was never where I intended my content to be saturated with. Frankly, it's a bit of a freak accident that we're here. I haven't spoken about Silent Hill 2. I never thought I can do the well-regarded games any justice. Despite gaining an appreciation for profound, prose-riddled scripting, I find that like a seemingly audible and textual lack of object permanence, I forget any fancy words the second I'm not looking at them. But this changes things. Yeah, that's about all I can manage. Which really isn't all that bad. So far, we've been through what I consider to be the games that killed
Silent Hill.
I wasn't able to get through all of them. So far, I've skipped Shattered Memories and Book of Memories. It simply wasn't enough years. But at some point, I started building up to this, the Silent Hill 2 remake. Silent Hill 2 is one of the most well-regarded games in the series. Many people like 3 better, heck, may enjoy 1 more. But Silent Hill 2 has been the one I played the most, that's for sure, including everything I like about the series in its most focused form, an exploration of characters and how their lives and world affect them, not to mention an amazing-looking PS2 game. I wish to see what the remake does, both as a follow-up to the last mainline game, Downpour, and how well it lives up to Silent Hill 2. This is possibly one of the most hard-to-follow-up acts in gaming, and if Bloober Team somehow succeeds despite how all their previous games have turned out, I'll be so much more than surprised. At least it's gotta be better than that little mobile phone experiment. Back in October of 2022, Silent Hill 2 and some others got announced in a surprise move from Konami. This along with some new Metal Gear info beforehand, it seems like Konami wants to get back into actually developing games instead of just gambling machines. People were immediately put on guard by the developers being Bloober Team. Seasoned horror developers for sure, but their track record wasn't good. You've seen the clips. They've insisted that they're taking great care and won't screw it up. We still have our doubts. 2 years later now, and it's in my hands. Does it live up to our greatest disappointments, or will Bloober Team truly surprise us in a strange twist of fate? Now, I do own a PS5, but I opted for the PC port. Now, sadly, for many reasons ranging from file sizes to mostly file sizes, I don't make reviews in 4K, but I figured I'd offer here just a smidgen of gameplay at like 18 FPS, meaning I now need to render this entire video needlessly in 4K. I hope you're happy. Needless to say, we won't be playing like this, so all the gameplay footage in this review will be in reality 1080p at 30 FPS with maximum settings, with ray tracing on and DLSS set to balance with some major to minor dips depending on the area. For your own comparison's sake, my hardware is an AMD Ryzen 9 7900X with 64GB of DDR5 and the bottleneck in NVIDIA RTX 3060. You may ask, Eve, why is your build so unbalanced? Put simply, Micro Center bundle deals, plus I mostly use my computer for emulation and productivity things, and more often games much older than what we're playing today, none of which my GPU is as big of an issue for. I will still, however, be playing with a DualSense, which I very much recommend. The controller lights make a really good health indicator with more variable than 2 layers of somewhat annoying red bordering screen. It's a remake, so the story stays by and large the same, with only some minor edits and rearranging of scenes, both in story and gameplay. Let's meet James!
We just got a letter, we just got a letter, we just got a letter. Wonder who it's from.
In my restless dreams, I see that town.
Receives a letter from his wife, a wife who died years ago. At least so he says. Despite knowing this, he heads to
Silent Hill,
getting stopped at a blocked off overpass of the town. A quick trip to dissociate in the bathroom where the game starts. The game begins here, and we grab the town map from James's car and learn ourselves of the controls. The original game used tank controls, which is fairly outdated by the opinion of anybody born in the last 20 years. Now, you can change the controls to be regular direction based, but I'm a tank control truther, thank you very much. Honestly, tank controls aren't quite as useful for this game as in, say, Resident Evil, because unlike those games, Silent Hill 2 has full 3D environments and very rarely takes the camera entirely out of the player's control. Usually hovering just behind James, it can swing around a lot, leading to disorienting directional controls, but not often snapping. Being a game from 2024 means the remake takes more of an over-the-shoulder perspective. You can call it an evolution of what Silent Hill 2 was already doing, but it really took the form we know it as today in Resident Evil 4 and evolved from there. I'm not stupid enough to think that Resident Evil 4 is the first ever game to use this kind of system, but it's certainly the first one that comes to mind. Maybe Winback? I'm getting off topic. The Foggett stickers are proceed down the trail now in the remake. You might even hear some noises in the forest. Before long, you've reached a well that has the very first save point. Save points can vary in Silent Hill games, but what's always nearly consistent is that it's an object or symbol placed around in convenient places. In Silent Hill 2, it's nothing more than a red, perfectly square paper. The game cheekily refers to saving by saying,
It's like someone's groping around my skull.
Entering the gate, we've made it to the graveyard, where we meet another person, Angela, somebody else in the town.
I'm looking for my mama. My mother. It's been so long since I've seen her.
They don't really care.
After we head further towards the town, things get a little different from the original game. When we enter the town, there's this flower shop. It's... What? Oh my god. Okay. After we head further towards the town, things get a little different from the original game. When we enter the town, there's this flower shop. It's unique and well decorated in both games, but in the remake, you can walk right in. There's a couple things to look at in here too. The remake adds a lot of new interiors to the town, and don't be scared, they know that Silent Hill is nothing if not a locked door simulator, so they make absolutely sure not to go overboard with it. I find that this game has a pretty perfect balance of enterable and not enterable places, and dungeons are not at all overstuffed with rooms. More changes come in the first fight of the game, where in the original you used to head back to the outskirts of town to get the radio and wooden plank. In the remake, you enter some alleyways, crawl under a garage door, do the whole thing, and have the radio and fight play out indoors. And what would
Silent Hill
be without a little fighting of the creatures?
Estrogen time. There you go.
It's time for my estrogen. It's not 2002 anymore. The combat in Silent Hill 2 isn't quite AAA marketable anymore, so we've got the more close-up combat the last few Silent Hill games have attempted to have. Contrary to popular belief, the original combat in Silent Hill 2 isn't all that good. Most enemies just walk in a straight line to your position, so while it controls awkward, once you do understand how it works, every enemy in the game boils down to hold X until it falls down, and then stomp it to death. Since every enemy is so easy to melee, by the time you face anything harder, you'll have more bullets than you'll have things to shoot them with. Hard mode is a breeze, and it's very disappointing. Silent Hill 3 did a better job at having enemies that you're scared to get close to, because it takes more effort than just stun locking to kill them. Our more recent example, Downpour, can be quite the tough game, and that's a good thing. The enemies in that game, while designed poorly, are quite nerve-wracking to get in combat with because of their erratic and hard to predict movement. You can make only a few mistakes and be far worse off than how you started. While the remake can't make it feel like the original, it does take what Downpour did and makes it feel way better. It feels more responsive without taking away the franticness of it. Enemies can go from stunned to attacking back with little wind-up without too much of a tell. Getting close to an enemy can go very bad for you, and quite regularly does. I'm playing on normal difficulty, and small mistakes are turning into really big problems. You can dodge, but often dodging will have you lose focus on the enemy, turning into a frantic search for where it went behind you. Healing items aren't always plentiful, and James here is kinda squishy. Getting into encounters with anything more than one enemy is asking to die. For the first time ever in Silent Hill 2, heck, even most of the series, I'm using the oh-so-very limited gun because I'm too scared to try and get any closer. If I had anything to complain about, it'd be that I think there's too much ammo around, maybe? Like, I felt like I was using the gun about as much as I could expect to be getting away with, but here I am at the end of Apartments with 50 bullets. Hard mode might rectify this. I can't be sure without playing on it, but that's a small issue in such a very well-made combat system. I'm scared to get into encounters with the enemies of
Silent Hill
2 Remake. The blows kind of soften up after the Apartments though. Around the time of the hospital, you find that you're starting to get showered in healing items. Here I am closer to the end of the game with over 15 syringes. The tension was still there for sure, I couldn't get too lax, but for sure I felt less on edge as the game went on. While I'm on those, you may be surprised to see separate combat and puzzle difficulties. I know a strange thing to point out, but I think it's important for you to mention it when I see it. Post Silent Hill 3, the series got real spotty about that. Only Downpour did it since then, so it's praiseworthy here. Those puzzles, on normal, were quite perfect. The puzzles made me think, but never felt beyond solvability. I took notes, and even opened Paint one time to take notes on these puzzles. I will praise any game that ever makes me want to pull out a notepad paper to solve a little puzzle. If I didn't have a little extra help from friends, some aspects of these puzzles would have certainly gone over me, and that's an incredibly good thing. You're so good with the little detail stuff.
I'm autistic.
We're gonna start skipping around a bit. It'd be a waste of time going to every detail. I'm no Ben again. That's not shade, I love his videos. Exploring around a fair bit more, James finds said apartments, which he needs to pass through in order to get to where he thinks Mary might be, at the Rosemary Park. This area, the apartments, is where the remake takes the most detours in its pathing. Most of the scenes, while still very present, are shuffled around a bit. You used to see the scene with Pyramid Head first, before finding Eddy, to which James asked him if it's a friend of his. In the remake, they're flipped around.
I didn't do it. I swear I didn't kill him. They don't really care.
The apartments in the remake don't play around either. It's a long area. Furthermore, the apartments didn't used to have an Otherworld segment. The remake turns the entire Blue Creek half into a separate Otherworld dedicated area. There's a moth room where we do the whole thing again. This is a strange thing the remake does. In the original
Silent Hill,
James stuck his hand in a wall once, and for some reason the remake has you do this in like every dungeon. Was the making of the little cutscene too expensive to not use at least 5 times? Before long, we're running from Pyramid Head long enough that we can leave and find Mary. So we go to the park only to find not Mary, but Maria, a near twin of her. Strange on its own, but James is steadfast in finding Mary.
I need to find Mary.
Didn't you say she died?
They don't really care.
Now you might be scared of having an escort mission of a game on your hands, but Mary doesn't really stick around that long. Really only half the game actually has her by your side. She dips out of the game for a bit shortly into the hospital before coming back and being gone again in no time flat.
They don't really...
Helps that Mary is quite the damage sponge in the original game, and in the remake, there's hardly enough ways for her to even take any damage. So she's a non-issue, really. The remake gives us a lot more time between the two while she is still around, though, letting us get a better feel for the two of them while they spend time together.
Is everything all right?
Yeah, it's just... This place just gives me the creeps. I'm not sure why.
You ever been inside?
Another character I've yet to mention is Laura, a little girl who's just kind of a brat right now. She's clearly no big fan of James in particular, but she's strangely enough here looking for Mary, like we are.
You didn't love Mary anyway.
What? Hey, wait! They don't really care.
We've by and large seen everything the game sets up by this point, so from here the story just develops. I want to praise a particular detail I had seen pointed out. Time moves along, as the story does. Upon first entering the hospital, it's quite pretty, actually. Sunshine lighting up the halls. Upon splitting up from Maria so she can rest, you find it's now night. The once inviting hallways now gone utterly dark. This game excels in atmosphere, both the original and the remake. Silent Hill hinges on its atmosphere, and not just its visuals, but its music too. Akira Yamaoka is back on music for the first time since
Silent Hill.
Homecoming, and it's just as you remember it. I just looked. Akira Yamaoka actually last worked on Shattered Memories. I feel I need to bring up another remake here to really put this into perspective. Resident Evil 2 lost a lot of itself in how it switched from having proper music to being very low-key. I'm not here to argue which is better, but rather in perspective for you
Silent Hill
to decide it on. Every track is intact, fully heard, and completely part of this remake. The game is not afraid of sounding like a video game, and that's something a lot of games, especially in this generation, are too afraid to be, focusing too hard on being movies. Basically every scene will sound as you remember here. Even when the camera is closer up, areas will sound as they always have. I think this is incredible of the remake, and a heavy factor in exactly why I love it so much. No, I'm not jumping down that. I believe I've covered about as much as this as one really needs to know before I give this warning. Beforehand, I want to make it clear. This remake is good, more than good. It's shocking in its portrayal of these characters and environments. The music and visual atmosphere are on point. The combat is a perfect mix of modern yet still unpredictable. You feel more for the characters than ever before. You should play this game. Buy it on PS5, Steam, or wait a year for it to come out on Xbox. You have my word right here that you will not regret it. From here on, I'll be exploring what I consider to be spoilers for this game, so please, play the game first if you have any interest.
Stop staring at her ass.
I'm not trying to. There are a good few characters, all of which are here for one reason or another, but all of them have one thing in common. It's all told to you as is at the end of
Silent Hill.
Historical Society section. All three of these people are here for the same reason. They, for one reason or another, for better or worse, killed a person. You first see Eddy in the apartments, kind of pathetic looking, but claiming he isn't responsible for the body in the fridge. A strange denial, since you have no reason to assume he had anything to do with it. You get more incidental info from later before the hospital when he tells Laura that he ran from the cops.
Anyway, why are you sitting here? I thought you said the cops were after you.
Nah, I don't think they followed me.
But it really comes to a head at the end, when it becomes obvious he shot somebody. He shot multiple somebodies. He suffers from great insecurity about himself, but he used this perception of others on himself as an excuse to do horrible acts. He thought that perceiving others as looking down upon him made him right for killing them. This obviously caught up to him, so said police were probably looking for him then. He fled the Silent Hill, where like the rest of us he had his own experience, where he learned nothing, ending in his fight with James. He's easily the hardest boss fight in the remake, a total 180 from the original version. It's tense, he can take you down quick, and the visibility impairments keep the tensions high. Oh! I thought I had more health than that! In the end, when you finally take him down, James feels great regret in the idea of having taken a human life, something that greatly bothers him. In the end, he accused James of looking down on him too, Call that theater cutscene. The way it's framed is designed to look unappealing, ugly even.
Ew.
Ew. It is so easy to look down upon him without thinking too hard, and I'm willing to bet you might have too. Angela is in many ways quite the opposite case. When you meet her, she's just looking for her mother like you're looking for your wife. But as soon as the apartments, she's not doing very well. She freaks out. It's obvious to anybody that she's extremely traumatized. She doesn't trust James, or any man. Because as we see in the end of the Historical Society again, we enter her world for a little bit. The boss fight against Abstract Daddy is intense, claustrophobic. It shows you exactly how horrible what Angela went through was without saying a single word. Not one person I know didn't go over to take a few more swings at the boss after its death. It's not a stretch to say Angela probably killed her father. Completely opposite of Eddy, this act was done with a justifiable reason, but it didn't make her feel any better. It's obvious, even with him gone, Angela never felt safe a single day in her life, and it hurts to watch happen. The last time you see her is right at the end of the game. At the end of the hotel, you finally see the world exactly as she sees it, covered in flames. She asks for the knife back from James. He refuses, but clearly that doesn't change what she intends to do. Still no more trusting of anybody than she ever was. There's nothing James, or even you, the player, can do to help. To try would just be an insult to her and her experiences. I said 3, but that's because these 4 are very directly related, unlike the other 2. James's story is one more of moral ambiguity. James wasn't an innocent act, but neither was it a malicious one. Our story starts an unspecified amount of time before the game. James claims it to be 3 years. James and his wife, Mary, are on a trip to Silent Hill, staying at the Lakeview Hotel. This wouldn't be long lasted as Mary would get very sick, terminally. This put a big burden on both of them. Mary would lash out at everybody, but mostly at James.
Well, what are you looking at? Get the hell out of here. Leave me alone already.
Mary would eventually succumb to her illness. Fast forward to now, and James got a letter telling him she's waiting for him in their special place. James and Mary loved the town. Anywhere could have been their special place. On James's way, he encounters Laura. Laura is a kid who was at the same hospital as Mary. They got along, and Laura didn't like how surly James tended to be. She's here looking for Mary too. We can assume perhaps her parents aren't in the picture anymore. Mary was hoping that she could recover and adopt Laura. This wouldn't pan out. Everybody in Silent Hill views the town differently. For every person, it's different. This is hinted at with Angela. Has some implications in Silent Hill 3 too. Explored plenty in Downpour as well. With this knowledge, Laura being so very okay in this town, she's young. She doesn't have the baggage these other characters have. For her, the town is probably nothing more than just an abandoned town.
Normal Hill.
Laura also provides us with the first glimpse that James may not be an entirely reliable narrator. According to James, she died 3 years ago, but Laura says they met only a year ago. When Mary died isn't clear. One theory I read is that it was only hours before the game. There's a blanket in the back of James's car, one the game acknowledges in one of its endings. Some say that's Mary. James then meets Maria. She looks like a twin of Mary, but Mary doesn't have a twin. At first it's surprising, but she's the only character in the game who experiences what you do. She's the only character that travels with you to any extent, breaking this rule that everybody sees the town differently. She's also never seen in the same room as any other character besides James. This is because Maria isn't quite a person. Don't get that twisted. Maria is her own person, but she is certainly, like the monsters in the town themselves, part of James's machinations. In later releases of the original
Silent Hill
2, we see this. As Maria, we play through a small story. It's hard to really make sense of it, but it makes it clear that Maria has her own thoughts, trusting James before even meeting him despite others telling her not to, before all of it is quickly discarded by the town, setting her on track to meet James at the park. She's not like Mary in every way, but she shares traits. She's very protective of Laura despite never meeting her, and as we see in the hospital, in poor health. She lays down for most of the hospital and comes back from nowhere to chastise James for leaving her alone. Shortly from there, she's killed by Pyramid Head, James leaving the hospital with that stuck on his mind. Now we've reached the secret society slash prison slash labyrinth areas. They really just stick all this here at once. Here, beyond what the other characters do, James sees Maria again, behind bars in this room, but there's something strange about her. She's not talking like Maria, she's talking like Mary, mentioning things only Mary knows. It's strange. She mentions a videotape at the hotel they stayed at. James promises to be back for her, but by the time he is, she's already gone again. Dead right where she laid. At the final area of the hotel, James meets up with Laura again. Laura admits that she tried to hide the letter from Mary to James. Strange, since James is holding it right now. She hands him the envelope, but it's empty. Laura runs off as usual, and James is left off to explore. On the map, room 312 has "Waiting for You" written over it. Through exploring, James finds the videotape he left, and once he's at the room, all that's there is a VCR and TV. It's a tape of James and Mary's vacation in Silent Hill, where they stayed in this room. She coughs. Footage then abruptly switches to the truth, what James has spent the whole game looking away from. Mary didn't die from her illness. James did it himself. James killed Mary. Mary was such a burden. James felt resentment. He hated how much of his life he lost to this disease she has. He wanted his life back from her. We go through what you may believe to be the other world of this hotel, but rather it's reversed. The other world is the clean hotel we see, and what we see now is what the hotel really looks like now. The clean hotel was how James remembers it looking during his visit with Mary. It was how it looked in his head. James fights Pyramid Head one last time. We see Pyramid Head in the secret society as a sort of executioner, somebody to punish James for what he did to Mary. He declares that now that he knows the truth, he doesn't need him anymore. In the end, James reaches the top and finally sees Mary. But Mary is dead. This is Maria, now looking exactly like Mary. James knows this isn't right, and he needs to put an end to this. In a hard-fought battle, James finally puts an end to his nightmare.
Silent Hill
2 has many endings, including some new ones in the remake, I hear, but I just want to cover the main 3. I'll start with the one I ended up getting, in water. James, finally getting back to his car, decides the weight of his sins is too much. He drives his car into a lake, finally reuniting him with Mary. In Maria, James decides to head home with Maria, perhaps taking her as a Mary replacement. On the way back, Maria coughs. James just says,
Better do something about that cough.
Better do something about that cough, signifying that he truly hasn't learnt anything, and the cycle will repeat anew. None of them are considered canon, but Leave is what I consider to be the best ending, and the one that the game generally pushes as the main one. James has a final talk with Mary, one where she admits she wanted it to be over too. But James knows that he didn't do it for her sake, but Mary implies not. James didn't hate Mary. He was fueled by the desire to get his life back, but James misses Mary. If James didn't love Mary, then he would have never come to Silent Hill at all. James went through all of it just for the chance to see her again. James is finally allowed to let go. Him and Laura leave Silent Hill together, and he lives on. And we finally get to see what the full letter James got was. It goes on. About Mary's state of being, the best glimpse at the real Mary we ever get, but the important thing to take away is that Mary had her happy life. And now she wants James to go on.
I want you to live for yourself and for others, like you did for me. James, you make me happy.
Sure, the Silent Hill 2 remake is good, but is it really more Silent Hill? It's not really much like the original at all. But does it really need to be? If we truly want more of what Silent Hill used to give us, that niche is now filled by the indie scene, Signalis, Hollow Body, Crow Country, Mouthwashing too. Retro horror games are in no short supply, and I recommend you go play those as well. Tell me in the comments how many times you checked the map. I did it 737 times.